The complete truth of Palestine in the Bible. What most Christians never hear. Everyone talks about Israel and Palestine today. The news is saturated with it. Social media explodes over it. Political leaders debate it. You will be shocked when you find 5 discoveries about Palestine. Discovery 1. The birth of conflict. But to understand why there's so much conflict over this land, we have to go back even further. We have to understand the family drama that started it all. Abraham had 2 sons, Isaac, born to Sarah, the son of promise, and Ishmael, born to Hagar, the son of Abraham's impatience. Genesis 16:11-12. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. That's not a curse, that's a prophecy. A prediction of perpetual conflict. Now here's what most people don't know. Many Arab nations trace their lineage back to Ishmael. The rivalry between Isaac's descendants, the Jewish people, and Ishmael's descendants, many Arab peoples, has shaped global politics for over 4,000 years. Genesis 17:19-21 makes it clear, And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. God blessed Ishmael. God made him a great nation. But the covenant, the land covenant, was established with Isaac. The war over land is not just political. It's familial. It's spiritual. It goes back to the very beginning of these 2 family lines. And according to prophecy, it's not over. But here's the question everyone's asking. So where exactly does Palestine enter the Bible? If this conflict is between Isaac and Ishmael, between Jews and Arabs, where do Palestinians fit in? The answer may surprise you. Discovery 2. Where did the word Palestine come from? Here's something that will shock most people. The term Palestine is not used in the Bible the way modern culture presents it. In fact, when you search for Palestine in Scripture, you'll find it's barely there at all. And when it does appear, it means something completely different than what the world thinks today. The word that gets translated as Palestine in some older Bible versions, like the King James, is actually Philistia, the land of the Philistines. Let me show you what I mean. Exodus 15:14. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Palestina. Joel 3:4. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre, and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head. In both cases, the original Hebrew word is Pelesheth, Philistia, not Palestine, Philistia, the land of Israel's ancient coastal enemies. Now here's what you need to understand about the Philistines. They were a seafaring people, possibly from Crete or the Aegean region, who settled along the Mediterranean coast of what is now modern-day Gaza and southern Israel around 1200 BC. They weren't Semitic. They weren't Arab. They weren't related to the Israelites or the surrounding peoples. They lived in 5 main cities: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. You know these names from the Bible. This is where Goliath came from, Goliath of Gath. This is where Samson fought his battles. This is where the Ark of the Covenant was taken when it was captured. This is the enemy that David fought throughout his life. The Philistines were technologically advanced for their time. They had iron weapons when most of the region was still using bronze. They were fierce warriors. They were Israel's most persistent enemy for centuries. But here's the critical point that changes everything. The Philistines went extinct as a people group. Completely. Utterly. Gone. They were gradually absorbed into other cultures and disappeared from history over 2,500 years ago. By the time of the Babylonian exile, they were already fading. By the time of the Romans, they were a distant memory. There is no genetic continuity between ancient Philistines and modern Palestinians. None. There is no cultural connection, no linguistic link, no archaeological evidence of continuity. The Philistines spoke a language that's now dead. They worshipped gods that no one worships anymore: Dagon, Astarte. Their culture vanished completely from human history. So where did the modern term Palestine come from? If the Philistines disappeared 2,500 years ago, why is their name attached to this land today? Here's the historical truth that will blow your mind. In 135 AD, the Roman Emperor Hadrian faced a massive Jewish revolt. The Bar Kokhba Rebellion was the 3rd major Jewish uprising against Roman rule, and it was devastating. Over 500,000 Jews died. Jerusalem was completely destroyed, again. The Romans were so furious, so determined to break Jewish identity once and for all, that they decided to literally erase the Jewish connection to the land. Hadrian renamed Judea, the heartland of the Jewish people, the name that meant Land of the Jews, to Syria Palestina. He deliberately chose the name of Israel's ancient enemies, the long-extinct Philistines, to humiliate and mock the Jewish people. Think about that for a moment. Imagine if a conquering power took over your homeland and renamed it after your worst historical enemy. That's what Rome did. It would be like conquering America and renaming it British Loyalist Territory to mock the Revolutionary War. Or conquering France and calling it Greater Germany to humiliate them. And here's what most people don't realize. For nearly 2,000 years after that, Palestine was simply a geographic region, like the Midwest or the Mediterranean. The people living there during those centuries were Arabs, yes, but they didn't call themselves Palestinians. They identified by their tribes, Bedouins, for example. They identified by their villages. They identified by their families and clans. In fact, here's something that will shock you. Before 1948, if someone said Palestinian, they were more likely referring to Jews than Arabs. The Palestine Post was a Jewish newspaper. It's now the Jerusalem Post. The Palestine Orchestra was made up of Jewish musicians. It became the Israel Philharmonic. When the British ruled the region as the Palestinian Mandate from 1920 to 1948, Palestinian Jews and Palestinian Arabs both lived there. The modern Palestinian national identity didn't crystallize until the 20th century, primarily after 1948, when Israel became a nation. That's not to say Arabs didn't live in the region. They absolutely did. Discovery 3. God's prophetic timeline for the land. Now, let me show you something that should take your breath away. He predicted exactly what would happen to them. both the tragedy and the triumph. Ezekiel 36:24. For I will take you from among the heathen, and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land. Isaiah 11:11-12. And it shall come to pass in that day, that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The second time. The first time was the return from Babylonian exile. The second time? That's happening now. But here's the prophecy that should send chills down your spine. Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Jesus predicted that Jerusalem would be trampled by non-Jewish peoples until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. For 1,897 years, from 70 AD to 1967 AD, that prophecy was reality. Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Crusaders, Mamluks, Ottomans, British, everyone controlled Jerusalem except the Jews. But then something happened. In 1948, Israel became a nation again after 2,000 years of not existing. That wasn't politics, that was prophecy. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel recaptured Jerusalem. For the first time since 70 AD, the city of David was back in Jewish hands. That wasn't military strategy. That was prophecy. Discovery 4. Jesus' warning. Jesus wasn't vague about what would happen in the last days concerning Jerusalem. In fact, he gave us clear, specific, detailed warnings that should make every believer sit up and pay attention. These aren't symbolic parables. These aren't spiritual metaphors. These are prophetic declarations about actual events that will unfold in actual time and space. Let me show you what I mean. Luke 21:20-24. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. Not if. When? Jesus spoke of this as absolute certainty. Jerusalem surrounded by armies, under siege, facing desolation. This prophecy had a partial fulfillment in 70 AD, when the Roman legions under Titus surrounded Jerusalem, starved the city, and then destroyed it completely. Over 1 million Jews died. The temple was demolished. Survivors were scattered to the ends of the earth. But here's what should give you chills. This prophecy has a future fulfillment too. Because Jesus said, Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That word, until, is critical. It means there's an end point. It means Gentile domination of Jerusalem is temporary, not permanent. And it means when that time ends, something dramatic happens. We watched part of that "until" expire in 1967 when Israel recaptured Jerusalem. But the final fulfillment is still coming, because the nations aren't done with Jerusalem yet. Now look at what the prophet Zechariah saw, and remember, this was written 2,500 years ago, long before modern nation-states, long before the UN, long before global organizations even existed. Zechariah 12:2-3. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Let me break this down because it's absolutely staggering in its precision. I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, a cup that causes trembling, shaking, reeling, like someone who's drunk and can't walk straight. The nations won't be able to handle Jerusalem. They'll obsess over it, fight about it, pass endless resolutions about it, but they won't be able to solve it or control it. Does that sound familiar? The UN has passed more resolutions about Israel and Jerusalem than any other conflict on earth. The nations are literally trembling over this one city. A burdensome stone for all people. Ever tried to lift a stone that's too heavy? You strain, you struggle, you might hurt yourself. That's what the nations are doing with Jerusalem. They're trying to move something that God has made immovable. But here's the terrifying part. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces. Not just struggle, not just fail, cut in pieces, destroyed, judged. And then look at the scope. Though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Not some nations, not regional enemies, not just Israel's immediate neighbors, all the people of the earth. We are watching this happen right now. The entire world, from the UN to the EU to international human rights organizations to college campuses to social media platforms, is obsessed with Israel and Jerusalem. A nation the size of New Jersey with 9 million people gets more attention than China. Zechariah 14:2. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. All nations, not some, not many, all, gathered against one city. But then comes the intervention. Zechariah 14:3-4. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley. And half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. Jesus Christ himself will return to defend Jerusalem. His feet will touch the Mount of Olives, the same place he ascended from in Acts 1. The mountain will literally split in two. Geography itself will change when the king returns. But there's one more warning we need to see. Jesus gave it on the Mount of Olives, looking at the temple, just days before his crucifixion. Matthew 24:15-21. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. The abomination of desolation stand in the holy place. The holy place is the temple. This means there will be a temple standing in Jerusalem during the end times, and something or someone will defile it in the most horrific way possible. Daniel told us what that is. Daniel 11:31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. The Antichrist will stop the Jewish sacrifices. He'll set up an image of himself. He'll demand worship. And that's when all hell breaks loose on earth. Jesus said this triggers great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Not like the Holocaust, not like World War I or II, not like any genocide or war in history. Worse, the worst suffering humanity will ever experience. And it all centers on Jerusalem. Jesus wasn't vague. He said that in the last days, Jerusalem would be the epicenter of the final spiritual war. Not New York, not Beijing, not Moscow, not Brussels, Jerusalem. A city most people couldn't find on a map 100 years ago. A city that had no strategic value, no oil, no ports, no natural resources. Yet it's the focus of end times prophecy. Why? Because this isn't about politics. This isn't about territory. This is about God's purposes colliding with Satan's rebellion. This is about heaven's agenda versus hell's resistance. This is about the return of the king to the city he chose. Could today's headlines be the setup for the Antichrist's covenant? Could the current push for Middle East peace be paving the way for the deception Daniel predicted? Could the international obsession with dividing Jerusalem be the very thing that triggers God's judgment on the nations? When you see the nations gathering against Jerusalem, and we're seeing it happen, when you see the peace plans that require dividing God's city, and we're seeing them proposed, when you see the temple preparations accelerating, and we're seeing them advance, you're not watching politics. You're watching prophecy in motion. And the clock is ticking toward midnight. Discovery 5. The False Peace and the Final War. Here's where everything we've discussed comes together. The land promises, the family conflict, the regathering of Israel, the obsession with Jerusalem. It's all leading to one event, a false peace treaty that triggers the final war. Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. The Antichrist will offer a 7-year peace covenant. After thousands of years of conflict, someone will finally broker the deal everyone has been waiting for. Peace in the Middle East, security for Israel, recognition from Arab nations, international approval. But it's a trap. Revelation 11:1-2. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. A temple will be standing, sacrifices will be offered. But halfway through the 7 years, after 42 months, everything changes. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. The Antichrist will enter the temple, stop the sacrifices, and declare himself to be God. That's the abomination of desolation. That's when the Great Tribulation begins. That's when the final war starts. A third temple, a peace treaty, a betrayal. We're closer than we think.
Many seem to be confused because they do not understand the book of Revelation. However, what if there was an animation showing the entire book? Well, we created that. And to watch that, click here.